I added 32 species of animals and plants to this heavily planted tank from 5 different continents. And in today's video, we're going to dive into 15 of those species of animals and plants and how they did in this tank so far. We're going to cover their native habitats, how they grow, how they behave in the wild, and what it requires to keep them in an aquarium. Let's dive in. The first species that I added to my tank right when I set it up was the Cryptocoryne undulata plant. The next animal I added was the Nerite snail, and the Nerite snail was also in my old tank when I set up this new tank, but I also bought new Nerite snails for completing this tank, so to say. Nerite snails are found in Southeast Asia, Oceania, and East Africa. They inhabit brackish waters. That means they require brackish or marine water to hatch, or their larvae require that water to hatch, so they won't overpopulate your aquarium. That means you cannot reproduce them in your tank, but still they are an absolutely beautiful tank inhabitant, because they eat algae like no other animal, and especially because you can watch them eating the algae because they're so large, so you can even see their mouths move, which is absolutely amazing. They can be recognized by their dark and helmet-shaped shell and rather slow movement. And as I said, it's a highly efficient algae grazer, especially on hard surfaces, which I think is probably also quite natural to their marine environment. And while they are peaceful and hardy, they really help control algae naturally without harming your plants. So I've never had a Nerite snail eat any of my plants, and I have many soft plants. Unless they die, then they probably attack the plants, but living plants are never attacked by Nerite snails. The next animal that I've added to this tank is the Endler's guppy. The scientific name is Poecilia vingae, and they are native to northeastern Venezuela and are specifically found on the Campoma and Cumana regions, where they inhabit warm and plant-filled lagoons. So as you can see, they are originally a species that comes from brackish water, and they were first collected in 1937 and were rediscovered in the 1970s by a guy named, and this is no joke, Dr. John Endler. So just like John Lechmere Guppy, who discovered the guppy fish, which you can also check out in my guppy fish documentary on the top right here if you want. The Endler's guppy was discovered by a guy named Dr. John Endler, and I think this is hilarious that they are named after a guy with the name Endler, but I think that's often the case. They were officially described as a separate species from Poecilia reticulata, so from the just general guppy, in 2005. As far as I know, and I think I also witnessed this, they can interbreed. So biologically, I think they should still belong to the same species, but in nature they would not interbreed, because guppies are from freshwater areas and Endler's guppies are from brackish waters areas, according to what I've read on the internet. They are very small, so males don't get larger than 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. Females get a little larger, and they are extremely colorful and life-bearing. That's why they breed extremely rapidly, and males court females constantly. So either you give them enough space, or you give 2 to 3 females to each male, so the male courting or mating doesn't hurt the females. Actually, and this is something that I found out quite recently, which surprised me, wild populations are threatened by habitat loss and hybridization. And even in some cases, there are wastewater streams that are let into their natural habitats. Also, hobbyists go there and catch them and try to get them to breed in closed enclosures to sell them to the aquarium trade, and this is something terrible. And I thought this would be impossible because they reproduce so fast, and other guppies, so the actual guppy fish that we know under the name guppy or Poecilia reticulata, they also are, how to say, invasive in other countries. Even in Germany here we have guppy fish in the wild. So that was something that was really surprising me. The next species is the bladder snail, Physalia acuta, which is originally, so there it's a little difficult to say because it's a quite cosmopolitan species. So originally they were native to North America, but now they are found on every continent except Antarctica, which is quite impressive. They are often introduced through the aquarium trade or even ballast water, because they travel ships also. They are spread all across Europe, for instance. So I actually got them originally through some wild plants I got from the wild when I introduced them to my tanks, and then they've been in my tanks for the last 15-20 years at least. They are naturally found in ponds, streams, ditches and lakes, and they thrive in nutrient-rich, but also in low oxygen and even polluted waters. They are extremely adaptable to pH, temperature and water hardness. Really, I introduced them to my scud glass or scud project 7 or 8 months ago. You can check out the video where I collected and tried to breed scuds on the top rights. And in this glass, nothing really survived except for bladder snails. This is the only larger animal that survived in this glass, although there's almost nothing in there. It's very low oxygen, highly nutrient rich and nutrient dense, but there's no artificial light or anything. And these guys, they're super hard. They reproduce in a hermaphroditic way and are capable of self-fertilization. And they lay gelatinous egg clutches and can multiply extremely rapidly, especially if you have high nutrient tanks. High nutrient tanks means in this case, if you have lots of excess fish food. They have an extremely important ecological role because they are scavengers that feed on algae, detritus, decaying plant matter, and leftover fish food. And they are useful in cleaning, but can also overpopulate aquariums very, very fast. The next species that I've added to this tank was the peppered Corydoras, or Corydoras palliatus, which is the first species in this list that unfortunately also passed away already. So my favorite Corydoras, Cory, passed away, and all of his smaller Corydoras buddies also. I don't know exactly why, but I think the water conditions weren't right for them, and I think they weren't feeding very well. Maybe I had the wrong food for them. Maybe I should have fed them more live food. I don't really know. They survived for 5 or 6 months, and then one by another they passed away, unfortunately, in this tank. They have an interesting natural habitat. So they are native to South America, especially Uruguay, Argentina and Brazil. And they inhabit slow-moving, cool and clear streams with sandy or muddy substrates. And I think that might also be the reason for their death in my tank, because in my tank, especially during the summer in Germany, it got so hot. Like 1.5 months ago, we had a heat wave where we had almost 40 degrees Celsius. This is why my larger animals, some of them had a really tough time, and the Corydoras catfish passed away. They are peaceful and social catfish that should be kept in groups of 5 or more, which is also why I got 5 at the beginning. They are known for their winking, which is quite interesting because they can move their eyes independently. They can gulp air at the surface, which they do by using modified intestines, so they can actually breathe air, which is also quite interesting and probably due to their natural habitat. And they get quite large, or relatively large, especially in a tank where you only have nano species like I do. They reach 7 centimeters or 2.7 inches, and they have a lifespan of 5 to 7 years under good care. And my oldest Corydoras, they got, I think, 4 years old, and the smaller ones, they really only reached like 1 year, fortunately. They have a mottled silver gray body with green or bronze spots. Actually, but I couldn't get that done, they breed easily in aquariums with cold water changes and a protein-rich diet. The females, for that, they attach adhesive eggs to glass, plants, or decorations, which I think is quite interesting. The next species I added is a plant again. It's called Duckweed, or Wolffia globosa. It's native to Asia, including India, Southeast Asia, and China as well. But now it's widespread globally in calm freshwater lakes, ponds, wetlands, and also canals. Also here in Germany, we have duckweed explosions, I would say, every summer, especially in very slowly flowing rivers. While duckweed is among the smallest flowering plants on Earth, it only reaches 1 to 2 millimeters in diameter. It floats freely in dense mats. It actually has a very important ecological role. It absorbs excess nutrients like nitrates and phosphates. It helps control algae growth and really keeps your tank nice and clean, basically, because you can just remove the duckweed from time to time, and by that keeping your tank completely free. It reproduces asexually via budding, and in aquariums it grows extremely fast and may require regular thinning, as I said. The next species that is super interesting and also unfortunately passed away recently is the black molly, Poecilia sphenos, which I only had one specimen of because it's a quite large animal and I wanted to add many species to this tank. So unfortunately this old black molly passed away recently, also during the very hot summer temperatures in Germany. Black mollies are naturally found along Central American coastlines from Mexico to Colombia, and they also inhabit brackish waters, coastal streams and freshwater rivers. In the aquarium hobby, black mollies are mainly kept in, I would say, freshwater tanks, but I've also heard of people who keep them in brackish or saltwater setups. They tolerate a wide range of salinity, from freshwater to marine basically, and they are highly adaptable to different pH and hardness levels, making them the perfect beginner-friendly fish for a relatively large tank, I would say. Black molly variant was developed through selective breeding, so the standard wild molly coloration includes silver with black spots. And this is called, I think, diamond molly in German retail stores at least. It's a live bearer that breeds readily in home aquariums, and that's also the reason why I didn't get many more of them, so I kept this one alone so he could have the rest of his life in this tank. I didn't get him a buddy because I knew that they would reproduce instantly, and the black molly that I had was from a friend of mine who took apart his tank basically, and then he gave me his black molly to take care of him until he dies, which he did now in the last few weeks. Females give birth to 20 to 100 fry every 30 to 40 days, so really, if you get this fish, be aware that they reproduce extremely quickly. The next one that we added to this tank is called Hemianthus, callitrichoides, which is a plant again that was discovered originally in Cuba near Las Posas in shallow streams and riverbanks with high light and readily available CO2. It's one of the smallest carpet plants in aquascaping, and it forms dense, bright green mats across the substrate when given strong light and CO2 injections. And this is the reason why my Hemianthus patch probably died in the end. So I still keep it in my other smaller tank, but it really needs CO2 readily available, which is why it grows outside of the water pretty well. I tried to grow them out in a growth setup, which worked quite well, but it didn't survive very long in the tank. It's a demanding plant. It requires soft, nutrient-rich substrate. This was also a reason why it probably died, because I put it directly on my sand, and it needs stable CO2 and bright light. It grows slowly or not at all without CO2 actually. And if you propagate it, it propagates or it spreads by runners, and you can trim it and put it apart, and then usually it grows if you give it enough CO2 and light. The next plant that I added was the normal or tiger Vallisneria. It's called Vallisneria spiralis tiger scientifically, and it's found throughout Asia and Europe, especially in India and Thailand, in shallow freshwater bodies. It's named for its distinct, dark, horizontal stripes across long, thin, ribbon-like leaves that get really large, so it gets up to 60 centimeters. It's a fast-growing rosette plant that propagates via runners, and it's ideal for background planting in tall aquariums. It's, I would say, very hardy, undemanding. It tolerates wide ranges of pH and light levels. It doesn't really need CO2 injections or a very nutrient-rich substrate, but for sure benefits if you have that. And this is the same for its relative, the giant Vallisneria or Vallisneria australis gigantea, which is the next plant that I've added. Originally, I was a bit worried because the plant didn't look very healthy when I got it from the pet store, but after after a month or two, I was surprised by the pace with which it grew. It's indigenous to northern Australia, especially in large, slow-moving rivers and lagoons with silty or sandy beds. And it features massive ribbon-like leaves that can reach lengths of 1 to 2 meters, and they really form curtains in tall tanks. So they are ideal for background planting, but I would even say they are too large for this tank here. This tank is large, or relatively large, with 63 gallons, but the giant Vallisneria, they grow in a way that you have to constantly trim them back, because otherwise the leaves tangle, and this is stopping light from your aquarium light to reach other plants and makes the tank look dark from time to time. It thrives in medium to high light with nutrient-rich substrates, and I think this is also the reason why it grows that well in my tank, because the substrate in this tank is really highly nutrient dense. And then we have Anubias barteri with the variety Nana here, which originally is from West Africa, particularly Cameroon, and it's found growing along shaded riverbanks and forest streams also. It's a very slow-growing rhizome plant with thick, dark green leaves and typically grows 5 to 10 centimeters tall. And it's ideal for foreground and midground use, and you can actually put it onto your hardscape. Or you should. You shouldn't put it directly into the soil, because usually, or at least that's my experience, don't know whether this also happened to you guys, they will die if you just put them into the soil directly. They are extremely hardy and shade tolerant, so frequently I find Anubias that I haven't seen for like 1 or 2 years in my tanks, because they were growing under other plants, so on some hardscape, and then like a Vallisneria plant grew over it, and then you find it after 1 or 2 years. It's super small then, because it doesn't grow very well, but it still grows under shade. It thrives when it's attached to wood or rocks perfectly, and the rhizome actually rots when you put it into the soil. It's popular in low-tech tanks and also in shrimp setups, and it resists nibbling by most herbivorous fish, but also in fish that have a very high territorial behavior, like even I had it in tanks with some of my Malawi cichlids. And then we have the zebra nerite snail, the Vita zebra, which is native to East Africa, that I have added a few weeks afterwards, and it's common in rivers in Tanzania and surrounding regions. It's known for its striking yellow and black striped shells, resembling zebra patterns, where no two shells are identical, which is also quite an interesting fact. And they are excellent algae eaters, just like the Nerite snail that we discussed before. They do not breed in fresh water, as their larvae require brackish water, which prevents overpopulation. Then we also have another giant snail species, the red-rimmed Melania, or Melanoides tuberculata snail, which is native to northern Africa and the Middle East, but it's now invasive worldwide in tropical and subtropical freshwater bodies. It's a burrowing species, so it's usually nocturnal. That means it burrows through the substrate, which aerates the substrate, and this prevents rot and anaerobic spots, which is a benefit for your tank, but it also leads to smaller plants being unburrowed, like the plant we talked before, the Hemianthus callitrichoides, and that means that these plants can die in some cases when you have red-rimmed Melania snails in the tank. It's a parthenogenic live bearer. That means that females reproduce without mating, which can lead to fast population growth if you don't have any kind of population control measure in your tank. It's very useful for substrate health and cleanup, but may overpopulate your tank in nutrient-rich tanks if not controlled. Then we have the Marsh mermaid weed, which is found in wetlands, marshes, and ponds across the Caribbean and Eastern North America, especially in Cuba and Florida. Its leaf morphology looks as follows. It features finely serrated and almost saw blade submerged leaves that turn bronze to reddish under highlight. I didn't have this yet, or I only had this rarely occurring, but not in this larger tank. It has a medium demand for light, so it also grows in tanks without any light, and also relatively low demand for CO2, so I don't have CO2 injection, and it grows perfectly. Can get up to 40 centimeters tall, or what's that, like 15 inches, but mine never got that tall actually. It requires stable nutrients to maintain vibrant colors, and it's, in my eyes, ideal for mid or background placement in natural tanks. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like and subscribe button and comment on this video. Tell me which species was most interesting for you, and I'm sure if you like this video, you will love this guppy fish documentary about the life cycle, biology, history, taxonomy, origin, and sexual behavior of the guppy fish. This is linked on the right hand side here. And if this video gets more than 1,000 clicks, I will post another video with the remaining 17 species that are currently in this huge tank.